Welcome to the cellblock Scorch. This is Scorch 27, and I am Peixe. Long time no see. I hope everyone's having a lovely time. I have had a great day because I spent most of the day hanging out with Bones and Octo and Red, and they're great people. Alright, so the prompt for this week was mystery and intrigue, and that prompt was given by Lost. I am just going to read my piece and then give context after. The title is Anime Expo LA. Chase shot out of bed with a cry of pain, stumbling toward the bathroom to take his pain meds, only to collapse by the tub in fresh agony. The light in the hall flicked on behind him, and his big sister came in, reaching for the pills. First night of the summer and already the abuse? What is it this time? Cigarette burns, on top of the old ones. She shook her head, passing him a handful of assorted medication and a glass of water. He swallowed gratefully, then sighed, leaning back against the sink. I need to find her, and kill whoever's doing this. Oh, you're planning to commit murder now? I think it qualifies as self-defense, personally. I mean, preconceived kind of isn't. I mean, we've been tortured for 13 years? Yeah, about that. You should start taking the drugs before you go to sleep. That way, you won't feel any of the— No! I refuse to let her suffer alone. My soulmate is out there somewhere, being abused, and there's nothing I can do about it. The least I can do is take it with her. They say it can have the pain when the second party accepts it willingly. That's true, but only if she lets it. She might not. His brow furrowed, but he ignored her. I'm starting my search again tomorrow. Want to help? It's incredibly difficult to track someone who hasn't registered as a potential. I know, but I've been gathering information since the first time I felt it. Being the receiver, I know every injury she's ever had. I know she fights back because I've had bruises on my fists. I know she wears bikinis because she roasted that one time and I had horrific tan lines to fix. I know she went to boarding school or something like that because the abuse only ever happens in the summers. I know she's into anime because we have a tattoo now. I know— You know a lot, but not enough. And I understand you don't want to hear this, but it's possible she doesn't want to be found. Wouldn't she have gotten a tattoo with her name, address, whatever college she got into? Anything to indicate who she really is? Why hasn't she registered? Surely her abuser can't prevent that while she's away. I know you want to save her, and that's wonderful, but you don't want to see me heartbroken, is that it? Soulmate pairs compose about 60% of the population. Everyone else does what they want, but no attachments like that. And only the receiver part of the pair has any proof of a connection. She probably doesn't know I exist. But I don't care. My heart is already broken. The girl I've chosen to love has been viciously abused since I was 6 years old. I am never going to get a disconnect. I'm going to rescue her. Oh, Chase. I'm sorry. Her eyes filled with tears, and they held each other for a while. The next morning, he walked to the library. He always wandered about with his scars on display, just in case. Hey, thanks for meeting me. The suit stood up, shaking his hand enthusiastically. Of course, Chase, any time. Our agency prides itself on discovering soulmates with ease at a shockingly affordable— I've heard the spiel. You can shut up now that you're hired. This portfolio is a copy of everything I know about her. Get back to me in 2 weeks. I expect strong progress, if not results. A bit rude, perhaps, but he was used to a lack of effort from third parties. And he was right. A month passed with nothing. He was discouraged, but Anime Expo was right around the corner, and that always lifted his spirits. Entering the con later that week, he relished the energy. He'd been twice now, every year since the tattoo. Anime Expo LA. His first trip, he'd bought tickets on a whim, curious. He knew finding her there was a long shot, but that didn't stop him from driving nonstop from Vegas. It had been shortly after the tat. He hadn't even looked further into the mark besides learning it referenced to anime. The con was an amazing, if overwhelming, experience that sparked his interest. He went home and became an anime addict. He knew now to be proud of the royal purple fairy tale guild mark that graced his left shoulder blade. This, his third con, was special because it was another first. His long-standing prowess as an artist had finally entered the realm of fandom, and he'd earned himself a booth. He settled all his pieces carefully, arranging them by anime. Then he leaned into his hand and waited for customers, idly sketching a Groovia in the meantime. Late afternoon, his 16th customer, yes, he counted, approached. The girl came up in Urza cosplay, chattering to him about his Nalu work. Apparently, she was quite enamored. They made idle conversation. She gushed, and he fangirled back like a dork. She made her purchases, then turned to go with a playful hair toss. And when she did, she exposed her shoulder, and he glimpsed it. A sliver of royal purple on her shoulder, peeking out of her costume. Okay, so that was the piece. It was very inspired by the events that were happening right then when I wrote it. I'll start by saying the prompt, mystery and intrigue, you could go anywhere with that, right? That's really open-ended, really broad. You could do anything with it. Lost prompted it, so a little story time. I was roommates with Cricket and Bones in college, yes, and that's how we met, and that's how the Scorch started and all of that. But Lost is somebody who Cricket had known beforehand, so I was introduced to Lost through Cricket. And Lost made a comment once early on where she told me, oh, you roomed with Cricket so that you could become friends with me. Like it was like fate or destiny or something, right? And when she said that, what clicked in my head was, oh, soulmates, right? So I've always kind of considered, ever since then, I've been like, oh yes, me and Lost were soulmates. That's what that is. So when Lost prompted, I was like, I'll do a soulmate of you, because we're soulmates, right? So that's kind of part of the reason that happened. And then also, this was prompted shortly after the first time, I think, that we ever went to a convention. And I think it was me and Cricket and Lost, and we went to a convention together, and it was an amazing experience. Because before going, I had kind of just the only concept I had of conventions is, whatever has been seen on TV or made fun of by other people or whatever. And I was just like, oh, it's that thing where nerds go and they be nerds, and that's the thing. Which isn't necessarily a negative thing, because I think of myself as a huge nerd. I actually got teased at work today because somebody was like, she's the Harry Potter expert. I was like, oh my goodness. It's true. But anyway, I had no concept of it, and then I went to a convention with Cricket and Lost, and it was so much fun. Because it was more than just, being a thing for nerds, which it definitely was, but it was every kind of interest. All the different things that people like. There was Disney, there was Marvel superheroes, there was anime, all the things and books that people had written and they're excited about. And there was all this excitement centered around things that other people do, right? And so it really felt like a festival of just celebrating kind of humanity in a way to me, right? That sounds, I'm definitely romanticizing the experience a little bit, but I have been to a convention. I keep going to that one every year. So I really did like the experience, and I really enjoy the feeling of mutual respect that you get from other people, of like, oh, it's really cool that you're interested in this, and it's really cool that you're an artist, and not me, I'm not the artist, but the people whose booths you see. Anyway, I really think it's fun to go and to celebrate each other and have fun at a convention. I was kind of riding that high when I wrote this, which is why it's very anime-centric. Let me explain the tattoo that Chase has, right, that his soulmate got that showed up on him, is a fairy tale guild mark, and in the fairy tale anime, that is a sort of symbol of the found family that they belong to. So that's why it's, something he wears with pride now that he knows fairy tales, because that's there's a line in fairy tale where they say, it doesn't matter where you go or where you are. I'm butchering this, but I'll always be looking your way. And that's kind of one of the fairy tale mottos. And it's just really soft, I think. Soft and kind and nice to have that family support. That really solid friendship. And so that's why I have him wear that guild mark like a badge of honor, because that's what it means. Anyway, let's explain the soulmate nonsense that's going on. So I read a lot of romance, like a lot of romance. I read a lot of fantasy. I read a lot. That's the truth, is I just read a lot. And one of the things I really enjoy are soulmate AUs. There was at one point a soulmate AU that Bones wrote for a Scorch that I hated. And I talk about that in the recording I did of my piece for that same prompt. And so that will be up on the Patreon's second tier whenever we get enough support for that to happen. So support us. But anyway, soulmate AUs I really like because it's just, the fantasy of having a perfect person. Well, not necessarily a perfect person, but having somebody out there who fate has decided is your match, takes out all the difficulty of trying to decide for yourself who you're going to choose, which is why it's a fantastical idea. So I like soulmate AUs, and in this one, I chose to have the way that you tell you have a soulmate be that one person's pain is shared between the two, right? And unfortunately, in this case, as is the case with most of my characters, I chose to make it dramatic and angsty. So Chase's match, she suffers abuse and he feels it. And the world building bit there is that people usually register if they are looking for their soulmate. They're like, oh, I stubbed my toe, and they would mark that down. And somebody who was a receiver would be looking through the pings of oh, I felt this today. And that's how people would usually find each other. And in Chase's situation, his soulmate obviously isn't looking for a soulmate, so she hasn't registered or anything. So he's been hiring private detectives and stuff to hunt her down. That sounds scary. To hunt her down. No. But he's really in love with the idea of soulmates. So hopefully he doesn't get too disappointed. Who knows how the story would end. This is just an open-ended one-shot, so we don't know. But anyway, I love the concept of soulmates, so I actually have, this is a bit of a shameless personal plug, not for anything that you guys can read, actually, just to follow me in my career that is eventually going to happen someday. No, I write. So I have, obviously I write, this is a writing podcast. What am I saying? I have a world in which soulmates happen. And in that world, one of the possible ways to tell your soulmate is by shared pain. And that didn't necessarily come from this, but it is one that I always have liked. And this touched on it, so I thought I would mention that world. That world exists in the universe that I call Bittersweet, which I should explain at some later point. But basically, it has a bunch of different worlds with different magic systems that are all secretly the same magic system because it's all the same universe and works on the same mechanic. It's not overly complex, but at the same time, I could spend hours talking about it, I really enjoy the Bittersweet verse, and I am writing a book in it that I will finish this year and attempt to query next year. So, look forward to that announcement when it happens, if it ever gets published. I am rambling a lot. What's new from me? But I won this week's this Soulmate AU won. So I prompted the next week. And I prompted an image of a full moon over a beach. And I got the image off of a Twitter post. At the time it was a Twitter post. I guess now it's X. But I will put the link for that somewhere so that you guys can look at it and see it, probably on the Patreon for free. And that is the prompt for next week, for week 28. And it was this image with also, I think, the words, the 7 deadly sins. So, which I think for you guys is the second time you're hearing of a prompt that I gave that was the 7 deadly sins, which is funny. This was actually the first one I did because of the way we do this podcast roundabout. But that's another story I have, is I have a story about the 7 deadly sins, which is not in the Bittersweet universe, and will also someday, hopefully, be published. Hey, a girl can dream, right? Inmates. Speaking of con, speaking of that lovely place we go where we celebrate people for entertaining us with their stories and they celebrate us for supporting them. Speaking of, when I go to con, I always go with members of Stellacor. And we usually do themed cosplay as a group. And we have an Instagram where we have pictures of the past cosplay. And I'm very excited for the cosplays that we have planned for this September. So look out for those. Go check out what we've done in the past. We are not professional cosplayers by any means, but I think we look cool and we have fun, which is the most important part. That is all I have for you guys today. Have a lovely afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you listen to this. And keep those fires burning, y'all.
The Cellblock Scorch is a production of Stellacor, an independent group of nerds sharing their obsessions with the world. We can be reached at thestellacor@gmail.com, through comments on your podcast platform of choice, our Instagram, Stella_core, and at our YouTube, also called Stellacor. Feel free to check out our other productions on our YouTube channel or our cosplays on Instagram. If you would like to support our creative endeavors, you can give a one-time tip to the Ko-Fi of the writer of your favorite Scorches, or check out our Patreon, linked in the show notes. There, you can access the winning Scorches and episode transcripts for free, or sign up for Spark level support for $5 a month to gain access to all of the Scorch submissions.